let's talk about race, class, and culture. We're in a moment here in America, aren't we? We have, and I think that the moment might be escaping us from and I don't call it the death of George Floyd, I call it the killing. And it was an awareness and brought everyone to the fore when we were suddenly struck with this. That is terribly, terribly wrong. We can't understand that. And the resulting reaction has been, I think, not what America would have hoped since May 25th, 26th, when Mr. Floyd was killed. Where can we go forward? You're a solutions guy. What solutions can we look for? What does victory look like? What does a first good step look like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. So I'm really proud of the young people for getting out and protesting in a way that was mostly peaceful. There were some challenges, but not to focus on that, to focus on the idea that it was intergenerational, multi-ethnic, many people, and a lot more white people than were in some of the early days of some of the earlier civil unrest in the 60s. It gives me hope. I worked in civil rights. I was called in when LA blew up after the Rodney King beating and the president went to Los Angeles. A team of us from the National Urban League went there to help the Los Angeles Urban League. And I saw firsthand the results of people frustrated and angry. I didn't think I'd see that again in my lifetime. And then to have it happening with Richmond being one of the epicenters in many respects because of the monuments and things. So I was proud of the young people for doing what they know how to do. We still have to pull the levers of policy to make meaningful change. The killing of George Floyd and other innocents represent part of what we need to correct. There needs to be accountability in schools, in economics, in politics. And I think that what success looks like is where I'm not worried about my kids when they go out and they're driving a car and they may get stopped by an officer, where somebody I don't know can go to a polling place and vote their opinion, whatever that opinion may be. Success looks like I can go to a job and have an interview or my children and they're not discriminated against. A woman can go for a job and be paid equal pay with her male counterparts and her white male counterpart. So success looks more like equity, parity. It's a basic thing, but it's still a thing that we're chasing. And I think you're right. These killings, this odd time with the pandemic and us being at home and everybody seeing this stuff through technology, it has created a rare moment where we get to shape the world that we want to shape for our children. And they're a part of it. And, freedom isn't free. We have to work towards it. We have to all work on it. And I think society, America is big enough for all of us. If you take a view that it's just this little pie, so I've got to take from you if I want to have, or you got to take from me if you want to have, then we're going to clash until we're no longer here. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for people that you love. What I want for our nation is for us to use the best of America for all of America.
Right.
And, if my kids aren't safe, yours aren't safe. If your kids aren't getting, good care, my kids likely won't get good care. I want America to mean that we're looking out for each other. Because again, those cures I was talking about. If we underinvest in any group, we unwittingly underinvest in our ability as a nation to compete with the world. We underinvest in our ability to solve the very problems that we need to solve. If we spend too much time on this race stuff, it is a poison that grows. It is a virus in and of itself. And we've got to figure out how to undo the poison of racism. To not know is one thing, and I get that. People don't know all the things that we've learned at our 50 plus. But there are some people who are unwilling to know, and that's part of the sickness, and that's part of what we have to fix. We live in an era now where data is at our fingertips. You can find out what happened in any era of this society. You can talk to almost anyone in the world. And so not knowing or being unwilling to know is not acceptable any longer. It's an excuse. We don't have to operate out of ignorance, out of fear, out of presuppositions about who we are. So the simple way to say it, do something you love with somebody different. It's that simple.
You said earlier, data drives decisions. Is there a way to put data on a dashboard that says we're getting better or we're getting worse? I mean, how do we know? It's because I think the unwillingness by some to not know, they rest in their comfort. They don't have to. It's easier not to. I believe what you said in our pre-call, willful unknowing.
Yes, you have to undo willful unknowing. Yeah.
Willful unknowing. That's a powerful phrase. I love that. And because when you show something show something in their face, and they go, "Hey, look," they're going to naturally recoil. And by doing it through your storytelling, that's a powerful medium, obviously. But getting to that data that is really colorless. I mean, data is just colorless. There's nothing there. It's just like, look, it's either 75 or 25, 32 or 68. It's just a number that you kind of go, how do you get to, if you're at 32, how do you get to 64?
Right. Yeah, well, I think, so what you do is you look at the things we've traditionally looked at and you see how we're doing. So how's the U.S. comparing to other nations in certain categories around education or math or science or whatever? How are particular communities doing in terms of finishing high school, going to college, getting graduate or advanced degrees? And it's there. I mean, we've known for a while the effect of policies. And so where we see communities not doing as well as they should, we put resources there. What we've done historically is, as long as the favored community is doing well, we can let the other one slide. And then we come up with the narrative that says, oh, well, they're lazy, or, oh, they didn't work as hard. Or we make up things to fit the story or to fit the data. When the truth is, a normal brain is enough, and most people can achieve at sufficient levels to take care of themselves and their families. And if we invest in people a little bit, they tend to go a long ways. I mean, so a lot of people don't know this. So the light bulb was invented by, of course, Thomas Edison. What people don't know is that the filament for the light bulb, the thing that gives it its incandescence, the thing that actually lights, was invented by a black guy named Lewis Latimer, who worked with Thomas Edison. And so you don't get that part often in history. What people also don't know is that they're from Virginia, and his parents were escaped enslaved people who went north to have a better life for their children. And so here's a person that wasn't supposed to read, inventing the very thing that many of us use to read every day, And so again, people, we would want to make him exceptional. So what people used to do with me is say, oh, well, BK's special. He's really just really smart and blah, blah, blah. Look, I played ball. I almost flunked out of school. I don't treat myself as any more special than anyone else. Yes, I work very hard. Yes, I spend the time and I do the work. But at the end of the day, my hypothesis is that anybody who spends the time and does the work can get the reward. And so all that to say, let's invest more in our communities, but all of them. We can't accept one group doing well and another group not doing so well. We can't accept, I pay women this much for this job and men this much for this job. We just have to cut it out. I mean, we can stop it, but there's people that benefit from it, and we allow it to go on. And I think the moment that we're in right now, with young people saying enough is enough, is that we can fix a lot of this stuff and fix it without a whole bunch of committees and a bunch of heeing and hawing and taking, 6-7 years dragging our feet to implement change. I mean, back when Brown versus Board was passed in '54, I think it was, there was a deliberate resistance against integration. I mean, if you were in Richmond, thank God for Judge Merritt. But at the end of the day, people made choices. And so then the next generations have to live with those choices. So things that are set up, rules that are made in 50s and 60s go on to affect us in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, et cetera. So we are living, our neighborhoods are shaped because of what was done in the 30s. Wealth is shaped by what was done hundreds of years ago. Opportunities are shaped by policy that's put in place, decades earlier. And so what we have an opportunity to do is shape the environment that our young people, our kids will live in for 50 years, 100 years from now. And I think that I believe that if we can get people to understand that all of us are capable, all of us are important to this divine puzzle of life, all of us need to be the best version of ourselves, then we can create something that we can be proud of, and we all can be proud of. And it's not about your team and my team, his team or her team. We're all on the same team. We're all cousins trying to find our way home. We're all just human beings sharing the same rock called Earth.
I think Governor Beliles, when he met with Virginia Free's board of directors, we were beginning a Virginia way forward. What do we want Virginia to be going forward? He said, you have to agree to the problem before you can do that, and then agree to the data, and then agree to the solutions. And we don't seem to be able to do that in rhythm in this country. We have a House and a Senate just taking up the killing of George Floyd and obvious police reforms that people agree to, and still nothing. And there's universal agreement on 70% of this, and nothing gets done. And I believe, I'm a cynic, I was in the legislature, I think people do it to not get things done. I think there's an intentionality to not achieve policy changes.
Yeah, well, and that happens, and they're absolutely, it's not new, it's historic. I mean, some people ask me about the monuments for a second, and so I said, well, there's a tradition of monument removal in our country. I mean, so today, in 1776, soldiers and citizens removed a statue of King George III. It was in New York. So you know where the bull is on Wall Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that exact site, it used to be this big gold statue of King George III. And on July 9, 1776, some citizens pulled it down. And they decided that enough was enough. So I'm not surprised that a lot of things have been happening. There's the symbols of Confederacy, what people deem as hatred or what have you, whatever. So the people out in the streets have made choices, and the leadership has now made choices. But our elected officials not moving stuff along is in part influenced by their politics and what they believe to be true. Do they see the pie as big enough for all of us, or is it scarcity? Are they protecting something or building something? And so we have to exercise our right to vote and to put in leaders who will move us forward. And that's the work of civil society. I mean, I think that what we often see from people who consider the pie as finite, that there's only enough room for this group or that group, they do things to shift the way people vote or the way people engage with systems. I think people that are more optimistic about the pie, they want to encourage more people to participate. and they want to encourage more action. So I think, I tend to be in the camp that says, let's have more people to participate. The founding fathers set up a democracy that was built based on the right of participation and representative democracy. And I think that was wise, and it changes with the population. But people in power don't want to give up that power. And then if the people in power have a biased education or a biased point of view, then the decisions they make with that power are informed by that bias. And I mean, a simple lesson is don't add more bias. Okay.
And we mentioned this on the pre-call, and I guessed King George. I didn't guess at the time. I was like, it's probably King George would make sense. So, but you said stop adding to the bias. What did you mean by that? And what do you mean by that?
I mean that, if we don't read more and get more informed about what's happened in our history, especially when it's been, bias against women, minorities, people of color, then our policies and rules will be designed to penalize, they will be designed to constrain, they will be designed to put upon or to control. And so it's taking a biased lens and creating policy. So that's adding more bias.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we have to do is roll that back and create more policy that creates opportunity. So say, for example, if we know that getting a high school diploma and going to college is, allows a person or increases the likelihood of a person contributing back to society, paying more taxes, et cetera, then it's not a leap to say, let's figure out ways to incentivize going to school. What we tend to do is cut back on student loans, cut back on early child reading programs, cut back on some of the medicine that would make somebody a more productive citizen, especially after all the people we care about get what they need. And so then you're using the system for more bias, almost sinister kind of reasons someone might argue. At the end of the day, I think you have a lot of well-meaning people operating with a worldview that is misinformed. And then they come to the table and they, fight it out. And sometimes we get good policy, sometimes we don't. I applaud our General Assembly here in Virginia when they work together for good. And I'm not against, tapping them on the shoulder or plucking them on the ear when they don't do good sometimes. But we try to get it right.
How do you do that, and how do you recommend others do that? Do you recommend a phone call, a little text, say, we can do better than this. Let's not lose our focus on the better, the more perfect.
Right. Well, you got to speak up. I count many of the members of our legislature as friends. And so I talk to them and they may talk to me and we may kind of share a point of view. And fortunately, because we're friends, we can do it over a meal, or we can do it in a way that doesn't feel threatening. I'm not one to push an agenda on anyone, and I'm not one that allows anybody to push one on me. That said, I know I have an unusual access to some of these leaders, and not everybody does, but I think participating, so voting is a natural, attending your school board meetings, attending council meetings. You have to show up, and then we have to help people to figure out how to use the power in government in particular to make sure that things are fair, things are equitable. It takes work. It is no short-term solution. It is no easy thing, especially when you start talking about making rules. Sometimes it can take decades, and often it does take decades to sufficiently change rules. But what you can do tonight is reach out to a friend who's not exactly like you, and someone who likes to do the things that you do, whether it's riding a bike, going fishing, going to the range, whatever it is that you like to do, and starting the conversation. There's a great book by a woman named Carol Anderson called White Rage. So for some of my white friends who said, hey, I want to understand more about some of the things you've talked about when you've talked about our history and many of the challenges in it. And so that book has been one of the more enlightening, because when she's a professor, the way she lays it out is the facts, it's the data, you do with it what you will, but she just lays it out. It's called White Rage. It's really good. If people don't want to read, then they can watch An Uncomfortable Truth by Liko Mulholland, and also After Selma. Both of those videos are available on our TV network, and you can get to them for free. And those are particularly good. It's a documentary, and it's a white guy, and he's telling his family story in one, and then revisiting the young lady who was one of, if not the youngest person, marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and her perspective from as a child and then now as an adult, and what she's seen in Selma and some of the lessons. It's particularly moving, those two. But if someone wants to get kind of an education in a way that they've never had before, those three resources will really be illuminating.
Okay, great stuff. The part about doing something you love with someone different than you, how do you start that? If it's not if it's not a natural part of your day, kind of like, I'm going to call up my black friend and I'm going to go ask him to go do X, Y, and Z. Is that something that's accepted? I mean, would that be received well, or is it just worth a shot?
I think it's just worth the shot. I mean,
Okay. That sounds,
because
he's forced, you know, you want to be
well,
forced.
no, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Think about it. If the person is your friend, if it's really your friend, you know, not I have a black friend, but if they're really your friend,
right,
then calling them is no big deal, because you call your friends.
Right.
What are you doing tomorrow? You say that to your friends. Right. See, that's the thing. When people say, oh, I have a black friend, do you really? How much of a friend?
Really?
Yeah. How much of a friend is it really?
Right.
If doing something with them that you enjoy is odd, I would say they're not your friend.
Right. I'll never forget my one of the first years in the General Assembly. My seatmate was Algie Howe from Norfolk, and he's an older gentleman and wasn't used to working with computers. And I was helping him and understand his laptop and the voting system, because it goes very quickly, as you know, in the General Assembly. It was his first day, and he was a little flustered. And I was showing him the ropes, so to speak. We had a break in the action, and a bunch of the legislators were milling about. And I always made sure to sit with the Democrats, to your point, to sit with someone different than you so you can understand them. And he said, hey, meet, telling his Democratic friends, hey, meet my friend Chris here. And they kind of leaned in when they whispered to him, he's not a Democrat. And Algie whips around. He goes, you know, I have a lot of Republican friends back home too. I said, what is this, the early 70s? You know, it felt so, you know, but everyone has that moment though, right? It's like, are we really friends?
Right, right.
Do you qualify that? Friends don't.
Yeah, and so for Steve, Steve Case, and I said my first roommate at Virginia Tech, white guy. Sometimes I even forget about the whole white part, you know, and I suspect sometimes he forgets the black part, because we'll get on the phone and we're not talking about white or black. We're saying, how you doing? What are you up to? If he's passing through Richmond, hey, want to get together and have lunch? Or I want to run this by you. And that's what friends do. And I think when you have more of those conversations, then you feel comfortable if there's something that you're not feeling comfortable about, and sharing it. I think that's what friends do for each other. And so, plus, you know, life is short, Chris, and I don't want us to always have this friction. So we're, okay, here comes we got to have this conversation about this topic or that topic. It's going to be painful. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to cry. No, that's not what it's about. It's not about blaming. It's not about, you know, you have to do that. No, it's about, for me, where do we want our country to go for our children and our children's children and our children's children's children? And I think we have an opportunity to shape that. And people with good sense know that we have to figure out how to do it together, because we're stronger together. We're better as an America. I love our country. And at the end of the day, we need more love. We want to have a little fun in this thing. And I'm enjoying my second act. I'm enjoying my retirement. I like making these movies. And I love getting to do it with people that I care about. And we deliberately have interracial teams, intergenerational teams. We try to teach the young people coming up how to do the art, but how to do it from this perspective, through this achievement lens, because we recognize the power of it. Most people don't know that, or maybe they do, but whenever you look at the human story, most of the great things in the world were done by a diverse set of people. The big things, man on the moon, all that stuff. You can always find a diverse set of people. And it's pretty extraordinary. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to engage the best of everybody else. And I want to live in that world.
That's probably a great sentiment to conclude. Hopefully our first episode and our first shout out. I know you're busy. Laura Bateman sends a shout out from the Peninsula. She asked, how do you sleep? When do you sleep? Do you sleep? You're a very active man. I can't thank you enough for being here, first of all, and also doing what you do. You work in some pretty interesting circles, and it's extraordinary to see someone of your talent, expertise, and drive want to tell a happy story, the story that American, and I love the way you frame it for the good of our country, the good of our children. And I think that whole construct I think it comes from your faith. We've talked about that. And I think you're stitching together a story for the fabric of America that I think will be of great benefit to us all, and especially at this time when we're in a moment, and I don't want to lose it, and I don't think you want to either. So B.K. Fulton, founding chairman, CEO of Soulidifly Productions. I wish you and your lovely bride, Jackie, the very best today and tomorrow, and have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you as well. Take care.
All right. Take care.